Welcome to Rights and Remedies, the podcast where we explore the law, the fight for justice, and healing. I'm Allison Mahoney, your host and a lawyer dedicated to fighting for the rights of survivors of domestic and sexual abuse, as well as children harmed by the child welfare system. Each week, we delve into legal battles and court cases, share powerful stories that demand change, and spotlight the cutting-edge practices that are helping victims on their journey to healing. So, if you're ready to dive into the intersection of advocacy and healing, subscribe to Rights and Remedies today. New episodes are released weekly, and we can't wait to have you join the conversation. Together, we can make a difference. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Rights and Remedies. Today, we are going to be talking about preserving evidence in cases involving image-based sexual abuse or revenge porn. Now, this type of abuse involves the non-consensual sharing of someone's private, intimate images. Before diving into this, friendly reminder. Although we're going to be talking about evidence and evidence preservation, this is not legal advice, and just because you've listened to this recording does not mean that I am your lawyer. To be clear, I am not your lawyer, and my law firm does not represent you. I'd recommend that you consult with a legal professional about your specific case, or you can contact my firm if you'd like to consult with us, and then we can decide together whether we would like to work together or not. All right, image-based sexual abuse. In recent years, instances of image-based sexual abuse have skyrocketed. In a sample of just over 800 undergraduate students, 28.5% of them had their intimate images shared without their consent. And according to a Cyber Civil Rights Initiative survey, 23% of respondents were victims of revenge porn. Of those, 90% of the victims were women. And that stat underscores why a lot of people who are working in this space, myself included, are pushing for this to be considered a form of gender-based violence. If you're a victim, or if you know someone who's a victim and are supporting them as they navigate this process, taking the step to preserve evidence is really, really important. This is regardless of whether you ultimately decide to report the crime to law enforcement or to work with a lawyer to bring a legal action. Preserving the evidence preserves your options. You may change your mind at a certain point, and you want to at least have the choice of what to do. When you preserve the evidence, that helps you to that ultimately helps to hold the perpetrator accountable. Again, this might mean working with the police and working with law enforcement. If a prosecutor's office decides to prosecute the case, having evidence is going to be critical. It'll also support a civil action if you decide to sue the perpetrator, or even getting a civil protection order. Now, I want to acknowledge that usually when people are victimized in this way, now I want to acknowledge that usually when someone is a victim of image-based sexual abuse, their first inclination is to delete the photos, delete the videos, just make it all go away and get it off their screen. While that's a normal gut reaction, realistically, deleting what you see on your screen won't make it go away once it's online. So it's really important to address this and to save whatever you can before deleting images from your phone, for example. All right, so one of the first things I want to talk about is preserving digital evidence. And there's a variety of different types of digital evidence. I think a good place to start is with websites. Images, and when I say images, that can include photos, it can include videos, get posted on websites. And some of these websites are predatory websites that are dedicated to hosting revenge porn, which is awful and disgusting, but they exist. It is important that you capture all of the images. So capture the photos, capture videos, and save them. Now, when you're doing this, you want to get screenshots of the websites that are hosting the intimate images. For example, if you're getting a PDF or if you found your picture on a website, You want to create a PDF that shows the website's URL, and whatever is posted on that website. So this usually will mean changing the settings when you try to print something to PDF so that it also captures the header and the footer, and that will allow you to also capture the URL. If you can, you want to get the dates and timestamps on any websites. Now, this is important because it can show maybe when something was posted, but more importantly, when you discovered it. And the date of discovery can be critical if you're considering bringing a civil action. There's something called the statute of limitations. So there's a certain time period in which victims or litigants have to file a lawsuit and bring certain claims, otherwise they're time barred. Statutes vary from state to state, but in many, the time or the clock starts from the date of discovery or when someone reasonably should have discovered that their images were online. Now, you also want to capture comments to any photos or videos that were posted. Comments are helpful because they show the unique harms that victims suffer in these types of cases. They might show threats or encouragement to repost images. I've seen situations where third parties have taken a photo and then added comments and words over the photo, encouraging third parties, other internet trolls to repost the pictures everywhere. You want to capture all of that. So even if it's the same picture that's posted multiple times and has different words, for example, written over it, capture all of that. If you can, take both screenshots and screen recordings as you're gathering evidence and save both. You also want to capture any search results that lead you to websites where your images are posted. For example, you may just Google your name or a friend's name, and a bunch of search results will come up that lead you to harmful websites that are hosting the image-based sexual abuse. Capture all of that. And some people might be wondering, well, how would my name even be associated with what's posted? Image-based sexual abuse is often accompanied by doxing, where someone posts someone's image and then also adds in the person's name, potentially their contact information, maybe their address. And so when that happens, when you Google someone's name, the websites and the images come up in the search results. And then you also want to document and preserve evidence that shows any shares or reshares, for example, on social media, or the example I gave of images that have words written over them saying, repost me everywhere. You want to save all of that, and that helps to show the scope of the harm. So remember, the internet is fast. Posts can disappear in seconds or be modified. So is of the essence and capture whatever you can as quickly as possible. And if you miss something, it's not the end of the world. But just going forward, preserve whatever you can. And there's tools out there that can help as you're doing this, like a snipping tool or Snagit, which lets you take screenshots and screen recordings, or you can use your phone's built-in screen recorder. iPhones, for example, have a screen recorder. If you're using a Mac, you can hit Shift plus Command and then either 3 or 4, depending on whether you're trying to capture the whole screen or just an area of a screen. You also want to save communications. So these can be text messages, emails, DMs, potentially voicemails, any other types of audio recordings or video recordings related to the intimate images and the abuse. And these are communications with both the perpetrator and third parties. Third parties, maybe third parties you don't know. It might be internet trolls who are reaching out to you. Save all of those conversations. And I wouldn't advise engaging with them, but if they're reaching out to you, preserve everything. Or it could be third parties who you know. It could be friends or family who were contacted by someone with your intimate images or who stumbled upon your intimate images on a website. You want to save all of those conversations. It's better to be over-inclusive rather than under-inclusive when it comes to preserving evidence. Now, I want to talk in a bit more detail about text messages. When you're taking a screenshot of a text message, if the person is saved in your contacts, then when you take a screenshot, it's going to show their name at the top. You'll want to remove them, at least temporarily, as a contact so that when you're taking the screenshot, it shows their phone number at the top rather than a name. And then if the entire conversation can't be captured in one screenshot and you have to take multiple screenshots, make sure that the text is overlapping from one screenshot to the other. And the reason why this is important is it shows that the conversation that's being captured is complete and nothing was left out. And it also helps to show that nothing was doctored. So these are really important considerations, especially if a lawyer is trying to have screenshots or other types of evidence relating to communications admitted in a court case. And then another thing you'll want to save are conversations in writing to try and get the content removed. If you're putting in requests to have it removed from websites, for example, or if you're emailing websites to ask them to remove the content, save all of that. It shows your efforts to try and mitigate the harms that you've suffered and control the situation or address the situation. You'll also want to enlist the help of trusted third parties. So I want to pause there for a second. The word trusted is really, really important. Third parties often do reach out to victims of image-based sexual abuse, saying, "Hey, I saw your image on this website. I'm just trying to help." And you have no idea who they are. Do not trust them. Yes, there is a chance that it's someone who genuinely is just trying to help, but there's also a chance that it's a predator who's trying to get information from you, who's trying to engage with you, and who ultimately will abuse you. So when I'm talking about enlisting the help of third parties to preserve evidence, I'm only talking about trusted third parties, friends, colleagues, family members. If any of these types of people reach out to you and say they saw your images or were contacted by someone saying that they saw your images, get their help, ask where they saw the images, who contacted them, when this happened, and ask them to preserve the evidence in the same ways that we've been discussing. So, screenshots, screen recordings, getting URLs, getting dates, all of that. And then the last thing I want to mention in terms of preserving digital evidence is doing a reverse image search. Now, I know this isn't easy, especially if you're scared of what you're going to find, but it's important to understand the scope of the harm and to preserve that. So you'll want to do a reverse image search. And you can search images with Google Lens or images.google.com and then save whatever you find. If it's websites, make sure that you're saving PDFs that capture the URLs, that show what was depicted on those websites. You'll also, same thing as we talked about before, want to show the search results. And even if the same image is posted on multiple websites, save each of those websites. So once you've gathered all of this digital evidence, what do you do with it? Save it in a secure and safe place, like a password protected folder or an encrypted drive. You don't want this to get into the wrong hands or accidentally be leaked and then do further harm. So these are online harms. Online image-based sexual abuse also impacts victims offline. It can take an emotional toll. They may have to see a doctor. It might impact their social life or their professional life. You'll want to keep track of all of the ways that the image-based abuse is impacting you. So what I'd recommend is keeping a journal. Keep a journal and document what's happening and when it's happening. For example, if you work and you're missing days of work, or similarly, if you're in school and you're missing days of school or you're having to leave early, in your journal, keep track of the days that this is happening. It's just an easy way to show the harms that you've suffered. Same thing if you're in school and you're being bullied, when it happened, who it involved, what happened, keep track of all of that. And then if there's other things you're noticing, if you're losing sleep at night, if you're withdrawing from what was a normal part of your social life, If you're single and you no longer want to date, if it's having a negative impact on your existing relationships, potentially with family members or friends, keep track of all of that. And then there also might be physical manifestations of the harms that you've suffered, like weight loss, weight gain, losing hair. Note all of these things and when they're happening. And then, of course, if you're in any type of physical danger, if third parties are showing up to your home or your place of work, obviously, before you put something in a journal, do what you need to do to make sure that you're safe. That might involve calling 911 and asking for help, the assistance of law enforcement. Um, but you'll also want to note when this is happening and keep a record of it. Also, keep track of the dates that you're contacting people to try and address the harm. So, if you're making police reports and talking to law enforcement on different days, if you're contacting websites, if you're contacting other professionals or people who might be able to help you, keep track of when you're doing all of these things. And this doesn't need to be super detailed, but at least keep track of the dates, who you contacted, and what you contacted them for. If you file a lawsuit, eventually you're going to need to get your medical and mental health records if there are any that are related to the harms you've suffered because of the image-based sexual abuse. For example, you may be seeing a doctor, you may be seeing a therapist or a psychiatrist. You'll want to have access to the dates of the visits, how much you paid for the visits, and any relevant diagnoses. Important thing to know here. This might seem like a lot and it might seem overwhelming. You do not need to do this alone. Lawyers and other professionals can help you to gather evidence and manage this process. I'm a lawyer, and so I'm going to talk about what lawyers can do because it's something I'm familiar with. Lawyers can help to explain what evidence is needed to support a civil or a criminal case. And there may be unique types of evidence depending on the facts of your situation. Lawyers can also help you to prevent making mistakes when gathering evidence. So, for example, I mentioned that on websites, you want to make sure that the URL is captured and dates and times. And they can serve as a liaison for you with law enforcement or with other vendors who can help during this process. An example there is my firm. We work with private investigators often, and private investigators who we trust, who we know understand how to deal with these types of cases. They can help to gather and identify relevant evidence. And then there's a bunch of other vendors out there. One is PageVault. PageVault helps to preserve and authenticate digital evidence so that it's admissible in court. Lawyers can also send litigation hold notices. This is an important piece of the evidence preservation process. Litigation hold notices can go to perpetrators as well as to third parties, notifying them that there may be a legal action and requesting that they retain and preserve all relevant evidence. Companies have different document retention policies. For example, if there's a surveillance video, that surveillance video may be set to delete and then have new recordings put on it after a certain period of time. What a litigation hold notice does is it tells them that they can't let that happen. They have to preserve whatever they have right now, and information that normally would be deleted as part of their business, regular business, shouldn't be deleted. It should be preserved. So, in conclusion, I want to leave you with a few takeaways. And I know this is difficult, but these steps are important. While your gut reaction may be to delete evidence, don't do it. Save everything first. Preserve as much evidence as you can. Be over-inclusive rather than under-inclusive. Ask for help. You don't have to face this alone. You can get help from loved ones, from people who you trust, and then you can contact lawyers or other people who are working in this space who understand how to support victims of image-based sexual abuse and gather the appropriate evidence. And understand that this is one step towards taking control of the situation. identifying evidence, and then preserving the evidence, it ultimately gives you more options down the road. And then you can make the choice about what's the best thing to do for you. All right, thank you so much. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Rights and Remedies. I hope today's episode gave you valuable insights into the legal issues facing victims and the pathways to healing. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Whether you're a survivor, an advocate, or someone looking to learn more, we're here to support and empower you. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others. You can also follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at ALM Law LLC for updates, resources, and more. Until next time, take care and remember that together we can make a difference.